last years of the 19th century, that human affairs were being watched from the timeless worlds of space. No one could have dreamed we were being scrutinized as someone with a microscope studies creatures that swarm and multiply in a drop of water. Few men even considered the possibility of life on other planets. And yet, across the gulf of space, minds immeasurably superior to ours regarded this Earth with envious eyes. And slowly and surely, they drew their plans against us.
Broadcasting live
from a tiny studio somewhere in North America.
This is Dark Matters Radio Live. And now I give you your host,
the silverback of ufology.
Here's Don Ecker.
Well, greetings, ladies and gentlemen. It's great to be back. Tonight we have a brand new show. I think it's going to be a very interesting one. We're going to be talking about some actual, honest to God, interstellar visitors. But before we get into all of that, I got to tell you, I've been doing this professionally, this meaning the UFO topic subject, investigating, researching, and writing on it professionally since 1988. Now, in all those years, when my wife, Vicki, and I were publishing UFO magazine, we traversed this landscape literally from one end to the other. We were talking to people, seeing things, hearing things long before most of the mainstream public had a clue about it, okay? And in that time, I got to tell you, I've heard some absolutely crazy, crazy stuff. Now, coming from a background of law enforcement investigation, I got to tell you, I've held my peace on many, many things that I've heard, primarily because I need proof. I need to see evidence. Hearing a story can in itself be interesting, but if there's nothing to back that story up, well, hey, once again, just simply another interesting story. Now, in all those years that I've been investigating, researching, and writing on this topic, because of people that I have spoken with, people that I respect because of their meticulous research, I've come to one unmistakable conclusion about this UFO topic, and today, as they're also calling it, UAP, I've come to one conclusion, and that conclusion is quite simply this: there will never, ever be disclosure. And I say that for a number of reasons. Going all the way back to 1947 in Roswell, New Mexico, June, the very beginning of July, something happened that was unmistakably off the wall. Now, in my heart of hearts, I've always believed that something crashed there that was not from here. Now, over the years, I've heard many, many stories about that. I've had one particular researcher, I'm not going to name any names, but this individual was convinced that it was the test of a Nazi V-2 rocket that the Americans had brought back to the States fired off with a monkey in it. Okay. Never believed that. Another very, very famous individual in the paranormal field. Okay. We got into it quite, not viciously, but quite vociferously, because this individual was convinced it was the remnants of a Japanese Fugo balloon. Now, if you know anything about your World War II history, Japan utilized the jet stream in an attempt when we were bombing Japan into dust before the A-bombs. This was before. They came up with a plan, creating balloons, sending them up into the jet stream. The jet stream would carry them to the North American continent. These devices had weights and measures and all types of things on them, including bombs. They were hoping basically to start unquenchable forest fires in the American Northwest. Okay. Plan never came to fruition from what they were trying to do. Although there was one case where in Utah, one of these devices came down and a group of people on a Sunday school, basically picnic, discovered this, had no idea what it was, because our government was keeping it totally quiet. They never advised the American public that these things were coming over. They were afraid that the Japanese would hear that they were making it here and they would send even more. But these people discovered this wreckage of this Fugo balloon, fiddled with it, it blew up, killing them. That's basically the only real action those Fugo balloons managed to do. A few civilians. So my association with this researcher was convinced. Now, look, those balloons were made from rice paper and so forth. Okay. They were big and they did fly and they did get here, but they had no staying power. They would have corrupted almost immediately after coming down. So that situation, that explanation never made any sense to me. And finally, okay, knowing the people that I've known over the years, the people, some excellent researchers that, among others, took a real close examination of what did happen at Roswell, and the fact that I personally spoke to a retired Army general by the name of McMillan, who was apparently very well versed into what happened at Roswell, told me personally on the telephone that they were jumped on by command authority to shut this thing down. Roswell, okay? No doubt in my former military mind that Roswell was the real deal. Now, about a year and a half ago or so, because of everything that was coming out about disclosure, I basically sat down one day and I was thinking about this hard and heavy. And I wrote a paper called Disclosure, a dangle just out of reach. And in there, I came to the inescapable conclusion that the powers that be, whoever they are, all right, And remember, 1947, we have something called the MJ-12 document. Regardless of whether that's real or not, the names on that document are the people that would have been advised by POTUS, the commander-in-chief, the president of the United States, that at that time was Harry S. Truman. Okay. They would have been the guys that Truman would have contacted that discovered something that they found so troubling that they were terrified, absolutely terrified, that this would get out to the public. And at that time, it's very true, it may have destabilized our society and civilization as we know it. Now, in 1988, and this is just an aside, I became aware of some mutilations. Remember, back in 1981-82, as a criminal investigator, I was tasked to examine a cattle mutilation. I was basically unaware of all the wherewithal surrounding that phenomenon. Although I then did see Linda Howe's documentary. Linda Howe, a former reporter, did a documentary called A Strange Harvest. All across the United States, especially in the West, cattle were being, and other animals, not just cattle, horses, even wildlife, deer, bison, were being systematically mutilated. The mutilations, and the one I personally witnessed, were unmistakable. The cow that I happened to be assigned to investigate had half of its head, the skin peeled back, an eyeball missing. All right. The rectum and sexual organs of this cow, female, had been removed. All right. The thing that I found most disturbing about that case was the fact there was no blood, none whatsoever. Okay. Now, later, I was to talk to author, researcher, investigator John Keel. Keel had a very interesting take on what the blood may have been used for. Now, I have no idea, none, whether he was on to something or not, but all those cows over 40, 50 years that had been mutilated, and it's still incidentally happening, although you don't hear much about it these days. There had to be thousands and thousands of them. And one inescapable fact concerning all of those cases, there's always been an absolute noticeable lack of any bleeding whatsoever. Those animals were exsanguinated. And how that happens or how it was done, I don't know. I can only speculate. So, anyway, I came to the conclusion that there is something so insidious about this that this is what today is known as the core secret of the UFO, UAP phenomenon. The core secret. And that core secret is surrounded by a special access program, also known as a SAP or SAP. Now, what does that mean? Well, that means that this is so highly classified that literally only a handful of people would ever be privy very highly placed people, I might add, which incidentally does not include POTUS, the President of the United States. He is not in the loop. And we can prove that by going back to former Presidents Bill Clinton, former President Barack Obama, and I'm sure today's president, Joe Biden. Obviously, Joe Biden would never have been brought into the loop. There's no telling what that guy might have said on an off day. And the current president, Donald Trump. I am sure that none of them have ever been brought into the loop. Have any of the presidents ever been in the loop? Oh, absolutely. Harry Truman, probably, very probably, Dwight Eisenhower. Richard Nixon, I don't know about Nixon, but he probably knew a lot. And the one guy that would have been locked into this is Herbert Walker Bush, the senior President George Bush, George Herbert Walker Bush. Why? Well, at one point, Bush ran the CIA. And later, people like Dick Cheney were questioned about this. He served under the junior Bush, and he made it very evident that there was nothing there that he, former Secretary of Defense, could talk about. So where does that leave us? Well, we are out in the desert, so to speak. Now, did I come up to any possible conclusions about what, in fact, at least part of the secret might be? Well, actually, there are two areas to go into. Number one, my almost 4-year investigation when I was director of research for UFO magazine into human mutilations. Oh, yeah, they've happened. But that's not what tonight is about. And the other thing is the possibility, and I think a very good possibility, of a low-grade conflict being carried out in near-Earth space. I say that for a number of reasons. Number one reason is back in the 90s, we had some ins into the former Soviet Union. Remember, the Iron Curtain collapsed in 1991. And we knew people. One of them is a researcher now living over here by the name of Paul Stonehill. And Stonehill was very well acquainted, who originally came from the former Soviet Union, with some of the top then former Soviet researchers, scientists, among others, that studied the UFO phenomenon. And they came back with reports of ongoing conflict in areas like Siberia between different factions of the UFO phenomenon. In other words, look, if one group of extraterrestrials are coming here, there's no doubt in my mind that there are a number of others. Not all of them necessarily would get along. Hey, look at Earth, okay? How many different factions do we have here? How many do we get along with? How many do we have conflict with? Why would ETs be any different? All right, that's that. But I also documented in my paper conflict that took place in outer space, outside of Earth. All right. Now, that would be damn scary if that was part of the problem. And hey, if you throw into the mix human mutilations, and I've heard tales, rumors, okay, I'm going to tell you that up front, rumors that one of the reasons Roswell was covered up was possibly human bodies were discovered on the craft. Do I know that for a fact? I do not. But that is a possibility. So anyway, over the years, the 90s, up until about 97, 1998, UFOs were everywhere, everywhere. Okay. Then suddenly the tide began to recede. Fewer and fewer television shows and others were basically covering the topic. Then in 2004, although we, as of yet then, had no idea about it, the Nimitz battle group encountered with the so-called Tic Tacs. All right. Now, there were some pretty startling things there. When that battle group encountered these things, and today, I might add today, there are many people in the mix that believe that the Tic Tac objects were actually ours. But if we have that technology, oh my God. But radar ships tracked these things, whatever they are, dropping from roughly 80,000 feet, damn near in space, to the surface of the ocean in less than a second. Now, like I said, if we have that kind of technology, well, who knows? And for years, I might add, that I have heard from people that I've talked with, faced with, interviewed, researched, that we have a secret space program, that we have the capability and the ability of traveling beyond our solar system. Do I know that? I do not. But once again, going back to the 90s, Ben Rich, the former honcho of the Skunk Works at Lockheed, the guys that gave us the SR-71, the U-2, and God knows what else, all right? Top secret stuff from top to bottom. Aeronautical stuff that would make your eyeballs fry. Said during an interview with a reporter that we have the technology to take ET home. Is that true? I don't know. But it's certainly something to think about. Well, all of this began to come to light the end of 2017, when Harry Reid, the former, now dead, senior senator from Nevada, gave a presser where he admitted acquiring roughly $22 million to begin a program at the Pentagon, ATIP, okay, to study basically aerial phenomenon. One of the items was certainly UFOs. Now, there's been a lot of chatter about that. It's hard to say. But then, a couple of years ago, finally, after 50 plus years, the US Congress got off their asses and had some hearings about this phenomenon. One of the people that testified, and I honestly today don't know quite, I'm not sure how I feel about him, but a former Air Force officer by the name of David Grush. Okay. Now, I did find it interesting that after his testimony, there were individuals, I have no doubt where they came from, the military and the intelligence unit, IC, okay, the intelligence community, attempted to sabotage this guy by releasing private, illegally, I might add, medical records on Grouch. Apparently, Grouch is on the spectrum, okay? He perhaps might even have a touch of Asperger's. I don't know. I don't want to know. But what they did to that guy, well, okay, that's how they play ball. Look, when I was in the Army in Vietnam, I was in intelligence. I was in an organization called the Army Security Agency, one of the most highly classified groups at that time that was around. We were not being run by the Department of the Army. ASA was not Department of the Army. It was the NSA, National Security Agency. Among other things, we were collecting signal intelligence. Now, I have a working knowledge of how these guys play ball, all right? But then something else happened in 2017. Something that was, in a way, mind-blowing. We had an object enter our solar system, our sun, Sol. This thing came out of the sun, slipped past Earth before we even knew it was there. And as it slipped past the planet, it inexplicably picked up speed. Oh my God, there was a lot of chatter about what this probably was. Then Harvard astronomer Dr. Avi Loeb came out and suggested that there was a possibility that this thing might have been a reconnaissance mission by somebody, who knows, okay? Well, that stuck around for several years. Avi Loeb was roundly criticized by the priestly class in the academic and astronomy, okay, church, if you will. And hey, I admire personally men and women who are not afraid to sometimes think outside the box. Okay, well, that was then. That was a few years ago. However, just a little over a month ago, something else slipped into our solar system from outside our solar system. And this is also going to make a pass between Earth and Mars. Now, as you all know, if you watch this program for any length of time, I have a very dear friend I've known for about 35, 36 years, Dr. John Brandenberg. Brandenberg being a plasma physicist, a rocket scientist, okay? And we often talk about these things. And the other day, John called me up. We were chatting, and I said, hey, by the way, John, have you been doing any research on this new object, which is called 3I/Atlas? He said, oh, yes, I have. Well, I said, good God, let us do a show where you can talk about that. And he said, fine, when? I said, how about Monday, which is now, okay? So without a lot of further ado, let me bring Dr. Brandenberg on, along with Mr. Gary Kissel. And by the way, tonight, Mark Center is not able to join us. He's got some other obligations he has to take care of. Sends his regrets and his regards. But John, it's good to see you, my friend. How the heck are you?
I'm just great, and it's always an honor and pleasure to be on your guys' show.
Well, thank you, sir. We appreciate that. Before we get started, Gary, do you have anything you wanted to begin with?
I think it's really weird that you talked about the Fugo bombs and I talked about them this morning, educating some of the watchers of our Military Monday show. That led me to make a joke. Well, it's not so much a joke, but a historical anecdote about Dresden. And then in the news today, a 500-pound bomb was discovered in Dresden, and it caused them to evacuate the town, at least part of it.
From World War II.
Day.
From World War II.
Weird day. But I talked about the fact that the Fugo that came into the United States went into Oregon, and it crashed out there, and a woman and 5 children tried to drag it, and it exploded, killing all of them.
Mm-hmm.
And they were the only, to my knowledge, the only fatalities in the United States from them, or Canada.
Which was kept completely quiet, I might add.
Yes, it was.
In fact, nobody even knew what happened because that was, and what the illustration that you're making there, which I like, is how secrecy is so important that the death of Americans don't matter.
Yes.
And it's something that you and I talked about because, like, the coincidences after Roswell are the creation of the CIA, the separation of the U.S. Air Force from the U.S. Army, and the creation of what document?
Well, you're spouting off. I'll let you say.
No.
National Security Act.
This is your show. I'm just here as the fanboy.
National Security Act, yes. Well, okay,
I allowed them to kill Americans.
I pointed that out in my paper. In the event that it is under the National Security Act, it is considered a national security concern. These people, unknown bureaucrats, don't know who they are, don't know what agency they're in, can make a determination that somebody, and I'll just use the street vernacular, needs to be whacked because they're impinging upon national security. So in other words, they can come in and put a bullet behind your ear and nobody's going to say nothing about nothing, okay?
Yep.
That's what it can mean, John, when we talked the other day.
Yes.
When we talked the other day about 3I Atlas,
yes,
you indicated you've been following that very closely. Now, John sent me some graphs, among other things. We're going to be showing some of those tonight. Not yet, but we're going to be showing some. But the first thing I wanted to ask you about, there are many similarities between 3I Atlas and 6, 7, 8 years ago, Oumuamua, aren't there?
Yes, there are. They're very close.
Lay it out for us, buddy. Lay it out.
Okay. Oumuamua was, they even called it a comet initially, but it didn't put out any gas, which comets do. Comets are, dirty snowballs. Mostly they evaporate near the sun. And they determined Oumuamua had a solid surface. It was more like an asteroid, they called it, which means it could have had a metal surface. They bounced radar off it. It was only spotted after it had already passed, made a close encounter with the Earth, because it came from the other side of the sun, bent under the sun by the sun's gravity, and flew out of the sun, just like a fighter plane, trying to avoid detection. So then suddenly it was flying past the Earth like a bullet, and it's only then that we found it. So that's one data point. And of course, it was on a interstellar trajectory. It wasn't going to go into orbit around the sun. It never was in orbit. It just flew by so fast it was going to fly out of the solar system. But it only passed near one planet, and that was us. And it looked like it was deliberately targeted on us because it passed quite close and didn't pass anything else. And came out of the sun, so it couldn't be observed. So that was suspicious. Now, you must understand, I come from the defense/intelligence scientific community. I'm not an academic. I'm not from Harvard, Yale, or Yale. I don't feel beholden to any of the priesthood of academia. My own background is helping the Pentagon and the agencies to understand things that they see. Now, I was never read into any program involving UFOs, UAPs, or anything like that. I worked in Washington, D.C. for 15 years, so I heard a lot of stuff, some of it around the water cooler and the coffee machine. And I'll talk about that, what the result of that was later. But so that was Oumuamua. Now, first thing I want to point out is Oumuamua passed us before we even knew it was there, and then sped up as it was leaving the solar system. It was not, it didn't put out any gas like a comet. There's no way to explain why it would accelerate going out of the solar system. It was completely inexplicable. But academia never likes to say things like that. They like everything to be in nice boxes on a shelf. And so that happened in 2017. Also happening in 2017 was suddenly this outrush of disclosure. Congressional hearings suddenly happened. Grush and other people started talking. The Tic Tac videos were suddenly became public knowledge. So that happened in 2017, right after the Oumuamua incident. So that seemed to be triggering a hastening of disclosure by the government. And we also know for certain that the government knew a lot more about Oumuamua than they disclosed publicly, using national technical means, as they say. Now, that was 2017. As we all know, it looked like, gosh, there was going to be this tidal wave of disclosure, and then suddenly it kind of stopped. Now, suddenly, we're getting more disclosure. The DNI, Tulsi Gabbard, and Congresswoman Luna have both gone on the record as saying they have seen evidence of extraterrestrial technology. And that's a major step forward. Suddenly you have high government officials saying this, especially Tulsi Gabbard. And you'll notice they had two quite lovely women announcing this to the public, and both of them looked completely unruffled rather. They didn't look like they were worried at all about this. They batted their eyelashes and just said, well, this is the way it is. Now, that's one way to reassure the public that everything is going fine. And so we do know Oumuamua passed by the Earth and no harm came from this that we know of. We also know that there been an announcement of more disclosure, and the way they're doing it is to keep everyone calm. Now, what triggered this in the last month, this announcement by the DNI, Tulsi Gabbard, and the Congresswoman Luna, apparently was the appearance of this new interstellar object, 3I Atlas. Now it's coming to resemble more and more the properties of Oumuamua. It's not a comet, it's an asteroid. It's not putting out any gas. It may have put out a spurt of water or water residue, and that could actually be due to water propulsion. How do they propel? The best chemical rocket fuel is hydrogen and oxygen combining to form water. And this would give the signature. The water release was done too far out from the sun to be caused by the sun. So we have a number of things going on. We have this observation of this object that has now come in on the plane of the orbits of the sun, of the planets around the sun. So it's not passing close to Earth, but it's going to pass very close to Mars. It's going to pass very close to Jupiter. And it's also going to pass somewhat close to the planet Venus. Now, these are the kind of 1, 2, 3 most interesting planets in the solar system after the Earth. So this thing looks like Oumuamua, and like Oumuamua, it's following a trajectory that seems coordinated with the planets in our solar system. And this is like flipping a coin and getting heads, flipping a coin 100 times and getting a heads 98 times. It is completely unlikely that you would get objects like this flying close to planets. Oh, and when this new object, when it flies close to Mars, it'll be flying closest to the sun. The sun will be between Mars and the Earth, so we cannot observe this object when it gets to be at its closest point to the sun. So all of this is completely improbable.
Well, the other thing that you brought up in here, John, was the fact that it's cone, because typically, comets have a cone. This one doesn't have a tail that reacts the same way. And what I read about it is that sometimes it's pointed forward toward the sun and sometimes away from. Like, how can it do that? That doesn't act like anything.
That's almost completely unprecedented. The only comet I've ever heard that behaved like this was a thoroughly cooked comet that orbits near the sun. Basically, it's just a burned out husk. So this thing has what's called a anti-tail. Instead of the tail pointing away from the sun, which is a normal thing you see in comets, this tail of dust is pointing towards the sun. It almost indicates
shows that it's not being impacted by radiation, which is weird, right?
No, it's as if it's activated its own radiation field, like a microwave field.
John, let me ask you this. You told me that NASA has a probe near Jupiter.
Yes.
That could examine this craft.
Yes,
or this object. I should say this object. But
the probe,
when they were asked about it, they have not responded.
Yeah, it's Juno. It's Juno is the one that you're talking about. Yeah.
NASA has not acknowledged the request, have they?
No, they have not. They have been absolutely silent about it. They spread rumors occasionally. People will say, well, we can't do that because it doesn't have enough rocket fuel on board to do that. And yet, I can tell you from being involved in space missions, you have entire departments that know down to the very last drop how much fuel there is in the fuel tanks. Jet Propulsion Lab is running the Juno probe. they could call up on their computers instantly how much rocket fuel they have and how much maneuvering capability they have with that rocket fuel. And it's my understanding they have plenty of fuel to leave orbit around Jupiter. But by the way, this probe is already at end of life. They were going to crash it into Jupiter's atmosphere and burn it up. So Avi Loeb, who is a very courageous man, and I salute him, has suggested that they divert this probe to fly by this object as it passes by Jupiter. Now, any interstellar object, especially one of such unusual properties, you would think that NASA would want to get as much scientific data about it as possible. But no. They won't even acknowledge that their requests for a Juno divert, we're talking officially, NASA and Jet Propulsion Lab have been utterly silent on this request, even though it's been out there for a month.
What's your interpretation of that, John?
What's that?
What's your interpretation of that behavior?
I will tell you what my interpretation is. The US government and its allies are fully aware of 3IIP as possibly being an alien probe of the solar system, like Oumuamua. They probably knew Oumuamua was an alien probe of the solar system, specifically the Earth, and they know this one is like it. It's taking a reconnaissance probe. Now, just because somebody's doing reconnaissance on you does not mean they're hostile. So far, it's not been threatening. And this latest probe is not going to get near the Earth. That's very important to remember. It has made no overtly threatening, neither probe made any threatening moves towards the Earth other than flying past it. So that's very important. It could be simply a scientific expedition by somebody else. However, the US government knows far more about this than they have acknowledged publicly. They don't want the Juno probe to fly past this object because then people will want to see the pictures of it. And they don't want to release the pictures because they know it's probably looks like the Battlestar Galactica or something. So this is why the US government, this is creating, I believe, a secret crisis within the US government and the allies of the United States. They are trying to figure out what to do. I believe we have national technical means that we will be able to monitor this thing at all times, even when it's on the other side of the sun. We have a lot of probes around the planet Mars. Some of those probes have very powerful telescopes that can actually look at it without even leaving Mars orbit. So, but the government is being absolutely silent about it officially because they don't want people asking them, well, what did you find out when you sent this profile? No, they want this done discreetly. They say this is not a job for NASA. This is a job for the Space Force. And if you ask them what you're doing about it, they say, we're handling it. And they say, who is handling it? And they say, experts. It's just
yeah,
like
Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Yeah. You know, just exactly the scene I'm talking about.
Top men.
Top men in their fields. So now, bottom line is, Avi Loeb has proposed this could be an alien reconnaissance probe like Oumuamua. And I salute him for making that. He's belled the cat, so to speak. In the old
He's been taking a hell of a lot of heat, hadn't he?
That's right. And sometimes you can take a lot more heat for speaking the truth than you can for saying something that is later proved false. I think he's speaking. I mean, I come from a completely different background. I am not from academia. I'm from the defense and intelligence community. That's where my training was in my career. So this thing gives every indication, in my opinion, of being a reconnaissance probe. Now, so Avi Loeb has pointed this out. He's taking a lot of heat for it, but I salute him for it. Now, the government knows this. I'm certain that the government is highly aware of this, and they don't want to acknowledge their concern to the public because they're afraid the public will get upset. And when I first started hearing about this, I had moments of fear. I thought, suppose it is what Avi Loeb says it is.
You need to be paranoid. We need to really think that way. It's foolish not to.
Jerry, my saying nowadays is if you're not slightly paranoid, you're not paying attention to what's
Stephen
going
Hawking,
on.
before he shook off this mortal coil, what did he warn us about alien intelligence? We should not be looking for them. We should just try to be as quiet as possible.
We should make ourselves real small. And so now, so the government knows this looks like a reconnaissance probe. The government knows this and is taking appropriate action, but we don't know their ways and means of doing that. In the meantime, we must realize that the Oumuamua probe passed by the Earth. It did us no harm. And this one is not even headed towards Earth. Now, just the fact that we're talking about this today, I mean, we're sitting there saying, is this thing a cookbook? This book we found by the aliens, is it a cookbook? If we could, you know.
Another nod to a great science fiction show.
Look, guys, I've been, the last couple of weeks, I've been hearing, well, quite frankly, quite a bit of paranoia about this, potentially. Now, like I said, I've been banging around this field for decades. And over the years, I've heard all types of fear-mongering stories about the evil aliens, okay? And most of it has come to absolutely nothing. Now, that's not to say it's all nothing. There have been mutilations. There have been human mutilations. There have been people that have been killed in the vicinity of the UFO phenomenon. There have been people, even according to David Grush in congressional testimony, that have been killed because of this. Now, the bottom line is, what the hell do we make of this? John, what do you think we make of all this?
This goes to your essay. What is the core secret that they're trying to keep, that they do not want to disclose, that makes basically full disclosure almost impossible at this time? I believe is that they have discovered that the human race and the Earth is not an aberration of the cosmos. It's a mixture of good and bad. It's a very complicated place with lots of factions. And some of them are not very nice at all. And that is enough to make sure that they don't want to talk about the core secret. Now, I've written a book called Cosmic Awakening, where I speak to this core secret. Turns out this core secret may have been discovered at Roswell itself, which began the whole UFO cover-up in the modern era. And that is that the Roswell incident was because we were storing all of our nuclear weapons at Roswell in 1947. We had 5 nuclear weapons left over from World War II. And the UFOs were spying on them. and we may have shot down 2 of them with P-61 Black Widow night fighters using veteran crews from World War II. So that may be what really happened at Roswell, and they discovered in the wreckage human remains, perhaps mutilated. In any case, they knew that the intention of some of these alien groups, especially the Greys, were hostile towards the human race. I'm not saying all of them are hostile. Apparently, there's a lot of species out there that are quite friendly to us and are actually protecting us. That's what I believe.
Well, gentlemen, we are under a minute, John.
Oh, okay.
Before we've got to go to break. Can you finish up very quickly, or
okay?
We can certainly pick this up on the other side.
Bottom line, we are going to be okay. The future will look like Star Trek. We're just trying to get the book. Cosmic Awakening is about this transition we're going through, and it's a rough transition. It's a rough ride, cross country, basically, in our Land Rover, but it's going to turn out okay in the end. There.
Okay. Well, ladies and gentlemen, tonight you are listening to Dark Matters Radio. My very special guest and very good friend, Dr. John Brandenberg, is joining us.
Thank you.
We're going to be picking up on the other side. We got to do the break, so stick around because we're going to be back.
Hold on to your seats, Cosmic Explorers. KGRA Digital Broadcasting, the unrivaled #1 source for raw, uncensored paranormal and UFO talk radio, has just unleashed a sizzling online merch store. Stay cosmic on the move with accessories, rugged phone cases, vibrant yoga mats, and notebooks perfect for jotting down UFO sightings. Ignite your obsession with the unexplained through bold, exclusive gear that demands attention. Kicking off with the Supernova, the store launches 2 heart-pounding collections, KGRA Digital Broadcasting and Bishop James Long. Every item you grab helps power the network and its groundbreaking shows. Stand with the truth seekers. Act fast, score your stellar swag, and join the uprising today.
From Iraq and Afghanistan, our brave warriors are coming home, wounded. Some with wounds you can see, some with wounds you can't see. Wounded Warrior Project was created to support our men and women coming off the battlefield. Please help carry these warriors the rest of the way home. Get involved at woundedwarriorproject.org.
MUFON is the voice of thousands of like-minded people who want to see change. We speak up against UFO secrecy. We engage governments and agencies around the world on the topic. We share information with the public through our journal, website, newsletter, social media, and even our own TV channel. When you join MUFON, you add your voice to the cause. Few things are more important in our time than understanding the UFO question. Join MUFON. Find your friends.
And we are back. Oh, did we lose somebody?
Temporarily.
Connection. Oh, there
I
he
set
is.
out a search party for him. Ah, I found him.
The aliens
Oh,
got him, by
Bill,
God.
aliens got him.
because he stepped away for a second. I see. Okay, I get it, Bill.
Oh,
I had to step off camera.
I got to
all
tell
right.
you, right now we have two of the most beautiful women I have ever seen. Tulsi Gabbard and Luna are just beautiful women.
You
And
said
I
it,
love
Jerry.
watching them speak.
You said it.
And by the way, Luna has taken Lou Elizondo to the mat this week. If you guys have been keeping up on it,
Lucky
called him
Lou.
out. Yeah.
Oh, I
She's like,
missed that. What's the deal?
Luna gave him an opportunity to come speak up there with this a committee, and he was a no-show. He was a fucking no-show, and she called him out for it. Yeah.
Well, I've met Lou. He's a soldier, and he's just following orders.
Yeah, he is.
I met Lou via the telephone.
Yes.
I told this story a number of times. And initially he said he was more than willing to talk to me.
Yes.
But then I think somebody at the Pentagon, and I'm serious about this.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
Somebody at the Pentagon said, stay the hell away from that guy.
He can sniff out bullshit. And guys like you, if you get your hands on Lou Elizondo, you will tear him apart in an interview and really start showing to where he'll just go, sorry, I'm losing you, and then leave the show.
Yeah.
You know, because he's part of this whole disinformation, because Red Panda and Manny and I, you know, we talk all the time, and he is at the center of this. And we believe he is absolutely part of the disinformation, working for what intelligence organization? I'm not sure, but I know it's out of the Pentagon.
Well, look. Back several years ago, when that television program, Unidentified, was being run for a couple of seasons on the History Channel, okay? That's when I first discovered this guy. Now, I had no way of knowing one way or the other about him. They said he ran a UFO program out of the Pentagon. Okay, well, I accepted that for what it was worth. But the one thing that I noticed, and hey, look, when I was watching that show, I wore my detective hat, okay? I wore it all the time. And I noticed one thing, that every episode, at the very end of the episode, they had a continuous drumbeat about a potential threat that UFOs could, in fact, represent. Now, with what's happening right now, I got to say, now I'll tell you something. I'll tell you something else. You know, I guess, and my wife laughs when I say this. She said, as if there was any doubt. I am cynical. Okay.
No.
I have a veneer of cynicism that goes over me.
Not you.
Yeah, it's true. And look, you know, I've been hearing this new drum beat about everybody being freaked out about Three-Eye Atlas. Now, until I spoke to John the other day, you know, I kind of dismissed all of this, but then he sent me his graph. Bill, pull that graph up.
Yeah.
Let's show the audience what we got here. Now, this is a little work project that John put together. John, do you want to give us?
Yeah, we'll just go quickly through this. I'm not going to give a presentation. Anyway, we'll talk about basically Three-Eye Atlas, and we'll talk about it in the context of Oumuamua. Let's keep going. And this Three-Eye Atlas was discovered in July 2025. This is not a comet. it is an asteroid now, or what is being called an asteroid, meaning something with a solid surface.
Right.
And it looks as though the US government is very much cognizant of this and doesn't want to talk about it. There. Now, here's what a comet looks like. Notice the nice tail and spewing gas. It's a dirty snowball composed of very light kind of elements, hydrogen, oxygen, carbon, nitrogen, things like that. That's a comet. But Oumuamua was not made out of that. It was made out of some kind of red metal, basically. And it was long and skinny. It wasn't the usual potato shape that you find for asteroids or anything. In fact, they'd never seen an object like it before. It was 10-to-1 aspect ratio. It was 10 times longer than it was wide. This is completely unheard of. Now, it came flying by the Earth. They actually hit it with radar. They won't tell us what the radar showed, but it started speeding up as it left without any gas being emitted. So this was not a comet. Nobody had ever seen anything do like this. It only passed near one planet, and that was us. Now, they didn't get any direct images that have been made public. So they made sure that they understood it was a kind of a needle or cigar-shaped object. It came in from the other side of the sun, dipped below the sun, and then zoomed out to the plane of the Earth's orbit and past the Earth. And it came
Hold
quite
on,
close.
Bill. Go back. Oh, right there. This one. Now, this is the way Oumuamua came in from interstellar space.
Yes.
Flew behind the sun and then right past the Earth. That
right past the Earth, and we didn't even
that doesn't
see
look
it.
natural to me, John.
No,
and
it's
I'm
not.
certainly
Well, it's not because they usually come in with. I think you referred to it as ecliptic.
The ecliptic,
because
they come in as
follow.
This thing followed the ecliptic after it bent through the sun, which meant it was an orbit was precisely calculated to do that. And so the chances of this happening randomly, especially because it only flew near one planet in the solar system, and that was us. And it flew quite close, only a few times farther out than the moon is from the Earth.
You know, John, with my military background,
yes,
and I'm looking at this. I think you're absolutely right on the freaking money. I think this was a recon.
Oh, this is a reconnaissance. Every bit of my instinct from my own background and career tells me this is a reconnaissance mission directed at us.
Okay, Bill, the next one.
Okay, keep going, Bill. Now, that was Oumuamua in 2017. And there's its, now it made no water vapor emissions, no emissions of carbon dioxide. I mean, comets are made out of water ice, and then even evaporating quicker than that is dry ice and other frozen things like methane that evaporate far from the sun. None of that happened with Oumuamua. Okay, now, so Oumuamua, in Professor Avi Loeb's opinion, was possibly an alien reconnaissance. And I tend to agree with him. Now, we have it's been 7 years, and we have a new object coming in. This one came in right at the plane of the Earth's orbit and the other planets. It's going to pass by Mars, very close. It's going to pass by Jupiter, very close, and somewhat close to Venus. And it lies right in the plane of the Earth's orbit and the other planets around the sun. And when it passes close to the sun, which is going to be when it's close to Mars, the sun will be between it and the Earth, so we can't watch it. We won't be able to see what it does. If it decides to make a big course maneuver on the far side of the sun, we won't even know about it till it pops out from behind the sun. So this is worrisome. However, I am quite confident that the US government is in fact monitoring it, will be able to monitor it even when it's on the far side of the sun, possibly by using some of the Mars probes. So now this thing looks just like Oumuamua. Keep going, Bill. Okay, this just shows the orbits of all of these things. We had an actual comet. I mean, it was just a comet. It was interstellar. It was called Borisov. It came in. It looked like any other comet that's normally attached to the solar system, only this one came in so fast. It was obviously from deep space, not orbiting the sun, but it acted like a regular comet. It put out water ice at the appropriate
Now, is this
time.
the third object
So
was
this,
referred to?
yeah, 3I stands for the third interstellar object. I2 or 2I was Borisov, but it was just, I mean, there was nothing unusual about it compared to a lot of other comets we've seen. So it was kind of established what was normal, what was expected. And it did everything that was expected of it. But this Oumuamua and 3I Atlas are completely different. They are the ones that look like an intelligently directed reconnaissance probes. By the way, the comet Borisov, and I call it a comet because it was a comet, it didn't seem to be coordinated with any Earth motion of the Earth or the other planets. It didn't pass close to any of them. In fact, it got close to the sun, and apparently it was a dirty snowball, and it just broke up and evaporated. So, next, Bill. Okay, here's an image of 3I Atlas from Hubble. And what they're not showing you, you notice this, what looks like a cloud of dust or luminosity is kind of pointing in one direction. That's actually pointing towards the sun. And this is almost completely unheard of in a comet, especially a comet from deep space. They
also,
never do
John,
this.
It's not just that, but that it switches. Because at one point they said it was pointed away from the sun.
Oh,
and then it switched towards.
That's more recent. I hadn't heard that, and that's even more suspicious.
Yeah.
Yes, it could be that it's actually thrusting using a rocket thruster based on liquid oxygen and liquid hydrogen, because they say they detected water molecules during this time when it was pointed towards the sun. Only, by the way, it was so far away from the sun, water should never have been evaporating. It was like the scene in Ghostbusters where the egg starts cooking itself on the countertop. That's what it was like. It was like looking at an ice cube in a freezer, and suddenly the ice cube melts and boils into water vapor. So it never should have done that. And by the way, here are the light curves, which are the amount of reflected sunlight based on wavelength. It's kind of the rainbow, and it reveals that this object is very red. And what I have done here is I put the plot of the points that they've now recorded for 3I Atlas and overlaid them on the data that they got from Oumuamua. You can see it's got the same color curve as Oumuamua. It's a deep red object. It's one of the reddest objects they've ever seen. So this thing matches Oumuamua, and it's not putting out any gas. So it's not a comet. This thing is I just say it's an Oumuamua object. There. I just say it's an Oumuamua object. Okay. Now, what are the odds of this coming in on this weird orbit, passing these planets, and having these peculiar? So here's a thing coming in on a strange path, and its properties are strange. So everything has warning flags on it. My every instinct, just like for Dawn, my every instinct is this is a reconnaissance probe. It is not natural. They're even attempting, what's interesting is they're making fairly crude attempts. Whoever sent it, and I believe somebody sent it, is making rather crude attempts to make sure that we can't get a close examination of it. And that's good, because this also reveals that they don't want to be known, but they're not very good at it either. So one of the things that's nice is by being on this show, if they're monitoring this broadcast from this probe, they know we're onto them. We've discovered the book. Their great book is actually a cookbook. We've discovered it, and has a great deterrent value.
Well, since this is my show, should I go and load my shotgun?
Not yet.
Okay.
Just check your shotgun, make sure you got some ammo, but don't load it yet.
Yeah, okay. In fact, I'd recommend some salt shot just to piss them off.
Well, I'm quite confident. Guys, look, how long have the UFO phenomenon been with us? And I discuss in my book, Cosmic Awakening. We were discovered basically about the time of World War II by especially the Greys.
No. I have to disagree, John.
Oh, I disagree.
We were discovered about 15,000 years ago, at least.
I tend to agree. I mean, who depending on who you talk
to. No. We were planted here. we are alien to this planet. I really do believe that we were brought here.
I've even got the old ticket stubs for being brought here.
A freaking science experiment.
We're a science experiment. No, well, I mean, to me, the most telling thing is some of these aliens look and apparently act just like regular human beings. These Pleiadian people. And I think we've discussed this. There was the story that the Pleiadians are quite friendly. Some people call them Nordics. I just call them Pleiadians. And they look and act like humans, and except they have starships, and we don't. Now, they are apparently, the reports are is they are helping us and protecting us. They'll probably send us if they're like human beings, they're going to send us a bill later for their services. But and I may have mentioned this before. This is such a crazy ass story. I decided to believe it. They said they had well, I mean, if you're dealing with things that resemble and act like human beings, then you got to prepare yourself for crazy stuff.
It's too crazy not to be true.
Yeah, it's too crazy. No one could make this stuff up. So apparently they had a team of Pleiadian scientists and technicians out at Site 51 helping us to build better saucers. We're getting technological help. Okay, that makes sense. But apparently two of them were women, and they got bored out at Site 51 because it's nothing but cactus out there, and they could see the lights of Las Vegas over the mountains at night. So these two women started pestering their human hosts that they wanted to go to Vegas and see some shows and try their luck at the slot machines. So after this is the story.
It sounds like my wife.
It sounds so familiar. if these people look like us and apparently act like us in a lot of ways and like us, they get along fine with us pretty well. I don't trust them. In fact, I don't, I don't trust anybody completely, but I don't even trust the Pleiadians because they look like us. But anyway, their human host said, okay, so they got him some outfits, these two women, and some escorts to discreetly take them to Vegas. So they brought them to Vegas. They took in some shows. They played the slots. They told them they couldn't go to the poker tables because they're psychic, and they didn't want to attract a lot of attention. So anyway, and then they brought them back, and they were happy. So so that's just crazy enough that I actually believe it. And there's probably, and there's a lot of stories, especially from Latin America, of abductions and basically romantic encounters with.
Bill, give us the next slide.
Okay. Yeah. By the way, that's the Juno. Okay. Yeah, that's the Juno probe that they want to divert, and NASA won't even talk about it. Jet Propulsion Lab, they won't say whether it's feasible, not feasible, just complete silence. And Congress Representative Luna, she asked NASA. NASA won't respond. Okay, so people ask me about Oumuamua and 3I. Well, okay, so maybe it's harmless. Maybe it's just a peaceful reconnaissance. And then they say, what's the worst that can happen? Well, the worst that can happen is the Trojan horse. I say, bring it in. What's the worst that can happen? Yeah, well, you lose everything. So we have to be cautiously optimistic. I would say keep your eyes peeled and your powder dry, but expect that things are going to be okay. Let's be optimistic.
For all you sci-fi nerds out there, if you know Star Trek, reconnaissance means probe.
Yes, reconnaissance means a probe, an intelligence gathering expedition. Now, you'll also remember from Star Trek that the human race was embraced by the Vulcans, the people who were Spock's people. They welcomed us into the Galactic Federation. They decided that we were mature enough and smart enough to be part of that. And, the picture of the future in Star Trek, especially, I'm a Captain Kirk fan. Picard is fine, but I like Captain Kirk and Nurse Chapel and Lieutenant Uhura, all of that. Let's just say that the future was not without danger. It was an adventure. They had the Klingons, they had the Romulans, but they had the Vulcans, they had the Andorans. They had a whole bunch of people who were actually very friendly to the human race. And let's be optimists.
Well, once again, let me reiterate. I am a cynic. Now, this is the part that I wanted to get to. Now, before we do. We do. Back in.
Well, suddenly.
Wait a minute. Let me preface this now, John.
Yeah, John.
Okay, preface.
Back in 1988-89, Zecharia Sitchin's new book, part of his Earth Chronicles series, was released called Genesis Revisited. Now, I was reviewing every one of his books as they popped out. I had the utmost admiration and respect for that man. And when I read this book, Genesis Revisited, there was some stuff in there that blew my mind. And one of them involved a Soviet Union, because at the time it was launched, there was still a Soviet Union.
Yes.
Two probes, Phobos 1 and Phobos 2. Okay?
Yes.
Now, Phobos 1, they lost it roughly a month or so after launch. And the Russians said it was because they had some computer errors, maybe some computer coding. okay, and human error. Well, that
Human
went away.
error.
But Phobos 2 got to Mars, took up a position, took up orbit. Now, part of that mission was to do a couple of things. Back in those days, remember, we're talking the late 80s, very early 90s. There was talk between the Russians and the Americans on a joint mission to Mars. All right?
Yes.
And they were talking about the possibility of launching this mission in around 2015 or so. Of course, now we know today it never happened. Okay, it never happened. But they were hopeful then. Now, Phobos 2 was a part of that because the plan originally, and I got this from Dr. Marina Popovich, all right, the Russian Chuck Yeager. She had been a pilot in the Red Air Force. She had been married to Pavel Popovich, who was the first cosmonaut or astronaut, for that matter, in history to rendezvous and sync up with another spacecraft while in orbit. So this woman was nothing to sneeze at. And we're talking about this. And she said words to the effect of, well, you know what happened to Phobos 2, right? What? She told me it was destroyed. It was destroyed at Mars. And the last photograph that probe took was of an object, cigar-shaped, that she said, she told me, was 15 and a half miles in length. A gigantic spacecraft. Now, I didn't know what the hell to make of that at the time. But then she told me something that brings me back to this photograph of yours. She said that there was so much concern about that incident that President George Bush, not the younger, the old man, traveled to Malta to meet Secretary General Gorbachev. Now, at the time, and if you go back and you check the records, you will see that there was a hell of a storm going on. And Bush got into a small craft to go to Gorbachev's yacht to meet Gorbachev. And he took a lot of criticism and a lot of heat for putting his life in danger, the way it was described. But then I asked her, well, what was the reason for that? She said he went to meet with Secretary Gorbachev over this destruction of the Phobos probe. Now, I got to tell you, I was blown away by that. So at the time, I'm a reporter, right? I call up the White House. And I got Marlin Fitzwater on the phone. I had to ask for him. Do you know who that was?
Sure.
That was President Bush's press secretary.
Press secretary, yeah.
And I said, well, sir, I was told by the Russians that this is what they talked about. Is that true? And he laughed me off the phone, said, no, goodbye, and hung up on me. Okay. Well, that told me more than I wanted to know. Okay?
That's right.
There's a way that you do something like that.
Yes.
And that was not the way if they wanted to just shut this down. So, you know, I got to say, I think Marina Popovich was telling me the truth.
I believe it. Well, I read it in Aviation Week, but they wouldn't show any pictures.
I got the picture.
Yes, I saw it. I saw it. Yep.
I got the picture, and I got it from her. But tell us about your theory, your hypothesis about this just happened meeting.
Okay. Now, the 3-eye atlas. It's a very recent discovery, discovered the 1st of July. Since that has happened, President Trump decided he wanted an immediate summit with Putin. So they arranged it for a military base in Alaska.
Where
And now
Trump
today,
flew a B-2 bomber over them, which I thought was so
absolutely.
freaking gangster. I mean, that was gangster.
I know. It was gangster. And so what happened is they had the meeting, and the
ostensibly
backstory I
about the
heard is
Ukraine.
that,
Ostensibly about the Ukraine.
yeah, the backstory I heard is this had almost nothing to do with Ukraine. It was about rekindling the Russian-American alliance. And now you will notice the following Monday, all of our our NATO Western allies are sitting in the White House. They arranged this summit overnight. There's been no time for anyone to coordinate anything. Suddenly they're all at the White House, and that supposedly is about Ukraine. But what's the big emergency about Ukraine? You know, the battle lines there are fairly stable. The Russian army is not closing in on Kiev or anything like that. Instead, they say, well, we have to have a meeting with Zelensky, and here's all of these Western leaders meeting all at once. This is unprecedented, especially a meeting. Normally meetings like this are planned 6 months in advance. This one was just thrown together in 24 hours. So there is apparently a crisis going on, a secret crisis. Not only that, since 1st of July 2025, we've had DNI Tulsi Gabbard, a military veteran, and another military veteran, Representative Luna, have acknowledged basically knowledge of ETs. They've done it in a very kind of evasive fashion, but they have acknowledged it.
John,
So
I got to say this. I got to say this. When I was in Southeast Asia, in Vietnam, and the nasty little bastards were shooting at me, I didn't have any comrades that looked like this.
No, you did not. And this reminds me of, remember when the Russian MiG fighter guy defected with his MiG-25 Foxbat and landed in Japan, and he was running out of fuel. And just before he started to land, a female voice came on the radio and told him, it was a recorded message that said, "Comrade, you're about to run out of fuel. Please land." And what they do is they have women record those messages because it's very calming to men. So they've sent the two most calming figures they could in the government to reassure us. And by the way, neither of them looked panic-stricken to me. There they were, batting their eyelashes at us, telling us everything is fine. Oh yes, and we know that there's ET technology out there. So, this government, I think, is going through a secret crisis with its allies. And so I think what we're going to see is a renewed U.S.-Russian military alliance. They're going to somehow put a bandage on this Ukraine conflict, and my opinion is they're going to end it abruptly with some kind of peace agreement, and If the Ukrainians aren't happy with it, what they'll do is ship them another $10 billion like we've been doing.
Well, I got to tell you, and this is something else I noticed, that Vladimir Putin has been doing a little apple polishing of Trump.
Absolutely.
He said, President Trump would have been in power, the Ukraine war would have never started. And
I believe that.
That's something that Trump had been trumpeting, no pun intended, for quite a while.
Well, another thing that he did, if you listened carefully to Putin's speech in Alaska at the end of the meeting, he spent most of that talk talking about the former U.S.-Russian alliance during World War II.
Yeah.
And remembering that.
Right.
So I think that was the subliminal message, is they're rekindling that. Lord knows the Russians are worried about the Chinese biting off Siberia anyway. So I think what we're going to see is the rekindling of the U.S.-Russian alliance. We'll settle this Ukraine thing somehow. But this is the government acting with its allies, acting appropriately to a second alien reconnaissance that they've identified. This is what I believe is going on. And I calls them as I sees them.
Hey, I'll tell you what, John, I can't argue at all about
Absolutely.
that. I can't.
Nope.
By the way, I do want to point out, I've been having a conversation in the chat with one of our audience members, and he brought up a gentleman by the name of Jason Wright, who is a professor of astrophysics at UPenn. And he has had some interesting posts, and he's the one who is saying that NASA is not saying anything, which is weird, but he's saying that Juno is out of fuel, and that's why they can't retest it. So I don't know. But he does say Avi Loeb is still insisting 3I Atlas might have a large nucleus and suggests that the aliens are testing humanity to see who's intelligent enough to notice that their comet-like spacecraft is actually technological.
Now, let me bring something else to the forefront. And John, thank God you're here, because you can give all the ins and outs. In my paper, okay, disclosure, dangle too far. I talked about Avi Loeb going out to the site of a meteor crash.
Yes.
And dredging up debris from the meteor.
Yes.
And doing an analysis on it. Well, John, when I was doing this paper, John and I were talking quite a bit. And John said, well, you know what, Don? He said, that's interesting. I'm going to do a little research on that myself. And he did.
That's right.
And not only did he do that, but he came up with a very frightening conclusion. He discovered in Loeb's research that some of the material apparently was nuclear. John, do you want to take it away?
Yes. Some of there's two groups of elements that are very rare in the cosmos. One group is uranium and thorium, and those are can be components of nuclear weapons, of course. But another of the group of very rare elements, believe it or not, is very light. That's beryllium and lithium. The only place in nature you find, well, the only place, we're not even talking nature, where you find those kinds of elements concentrated together is in a nuclear weapon, because they use beryllium and lithium and uranium and thorium in nuclear weapons. So this is what apparently Avi Loeb discovered in some of these spheroids. They not only did they look completely unnatural, but they looked like they were part of nuclear weapons technology. Now, there's a perfectly, and I'm indebted to Sean Hazlitt for this explanation. There's another interpretation. It could have been what's called an Orion drive, which is where you use small nuclear weapon explosions to boost a spacecraft up near the speed of light. It's a low-tech way to get a spacecraft to a nearby star system. And that would also use nuclear weapons technology. So that's a more positive way to look at it. But I published this and there was zero commentary on it. Zero. No one will touch it. Not even Avi Loeb. It's a little too scary even for Avi Loeb to talk to. And, my own understanding is he's well connected with Israeli intelligence, Mossad, which is probably one reason he's still alive. The last guy from Harvard to talk about the UFO cover-up and ETs was John Mack, and we know what happened to him. He was head of the psych department at Harvard. People told him to be quiet. He kept talking, and suddenly he ended up dead in London, supposedly run over by a car in the middle of the night.
Well, I can go one for you too. Carl Wolf, a very dear friend of mine, was the Air Force enlisted electronic technician that was called into Langley Air Force Base, 1965-66. He was in a classified program where he would service classified equipment.
Yes.
This outfit was receiving telemetry from the moon, okay, on one of our unmanned recon ships. It was photographing the moon, okay, it was sending the telemetry back, and their printers, or one of their printers, broke down. So these guys contacted his unit. His unit's CO got Carl to go over and fix it. Well, while he was over there, he said, and I mean, he told me, I interviewed Carl too on Dark Matters Radio before KGRA. And he told this story, but he went over there. He said he was shocked when he walked in to this facility because there were scientific personnel, he said, from all around the globe in there.
Yes.
And he's taken back, escorted back to this room. He walks in, the room is empty except for one lone airman in there, keeping an eye on everything. And he shows Carl the electronic equipment that malfunctioned. Carl started working on it, discovered one of the components had burned out. So he had to make a call to get another one delivered over there. And while he's waiting, this guy, this kid, is sitting there, turned to Carl and said, we discovered a base on the moon.
Yeah.
And Carl was like gobsmacked. He said, what? Who's, the Russians? No. So the kid pulled out a couple of photographs and showed Carl on the rear of the moon, the dark side, that so-called dark side of the moon.
It's actually
not really dark. It's not dark, but the far side of the moon.
Far side.
Well, Carl was sure that this was going to be all over the news. He waits a week, and then he figures out, no, they ain't going to broadcast this.
No, that's not coming out.
So in 2001, he was invited by Dr. Steve Greer, who was holding a big presser with all these whistleblowers. Carl went in and he told him, he said, look, this is what I saw. He said, there was no mistaking it. It was a base, maybe an ancient base, but it was a base. And I'm willing to go before Congress, swear an oath, and testify to what I saw. Well, that never happened.
No.
Why am I bringing up Karl Wolfe? Because Karl Wolfe was out riding his bicycle, got hit and killed by a truck.
Yep.
Okay? Got hit and killed by a truck. Now, am I saying that's why he got hit and killed? I don't know, but it's
We don't
weird.
know.
It's weird.
We don't know.
We don't know.
We don't know nothing about nothing, right?
Right?
Well, I mean, we've all known that, especially during wartime. I remember when they captured a actual U-boat intact before the Germans could sink it. They drove it to the surface with depth charges, and then a special Navy team boarded it, took control. They captured its code books, the entire submarine. They had everything, and they towed it back to Bermuda, where it was all torn apart and analyzed and everything. It was a great intelligence breakthrough for the war, but they lined up those sailors who were on that destroyer that had taken this ship, and especially the guys who had been on board. And they told them, if you talk about this, we're going to kill you and your families. This was World War II. And they said, we're telling you this to save lives. The Germans can't know that we've made this intelligence windfall. They'll change all their codes. So this is typical of a wartime situation. That's unfortunate, but it's lethal force authorization is required in very sensitive military operations to preserve security. Every nation uses it. The fact that we use it is not something the American military likes to brag about, but we know that it does. And every nation on earth does it. And they've done it ever since the Roman Empire and before. So this is viewed, and this speaks to your core secret of the UFO cover-up.
I got no doubt, John, no doubt. And I have no doubt that in the event that the powers that be feel threatened by a quote unquote whistleblower or something like that, that could affect national security, that guy, his health insurance probably is going to be canceled.
Well, I became aware, I didn't really believe in UFOs until I started investigating Mars. And then I discovered I was being investigated. And I realized, oh, extraterrestrial intelligence is considered a classified matter, apparently. I was waiting for the tap on the shoulder to tell you, because I had security clearance and everything. I was waiting for the tap on the shoulder to tell me to quit investigating. I was part of the independent Mars investigation team started by Dick Hoagland. We were successful, but the tap on the shoulder never came. We were never told. In fact, one of the reasons was that the headquarters for the independent Mars investigation team was at SRI International.
Well, let me tell you a little something, and I'll have to send this to you, courtesy of my co-host Gary Kissel.
Yes, Gary. All right, Gary.
I sent a video that I saw, a reel from the Y-Files. You know, the guy AJ.
I love that guy, dude. I love that show.
Well,
AJ and Hecklefish.
He was talking about you, Dr. Brandenberg.
Mm-hmm. He was talking about me.
Your Mars Xenon 129 investigation.
That's
Make
right.
a long story short, he said, but here's the strange thing. In 1958, which is years, almost 20 years before the Viking Mars landers, okay?
Yep.
and the infamous photograph from Cydonia of the face. Jack Kirby. Do you know who that is?
Yes,
Jack
I
Kirby?
do.
Okay. Did a comic book about some astronauts that go to Mars and discover the face.
The face
on Mars.
1958, 59. Yeah.
20 years before we knew there was a face on Mars. And I got to tell you, that was a weird thing.
It sure was.
Weird.
But he was friends with, by the way, a lot of people don't know this, he was friends with Wernher von Braun and other people working at what would become NASA.
Yeah, but how would they know about the face on Mars? We didn't have
I don't know. I
anything
think
up
he
there.
overheard people is what I think.
Well, what happened, it's my understanding, is that everyone expected to find archaeology on Mars, especially Wernher von Braun, because of Percival Lowell.
Percival
There you go.
Because of Lowell's, they didn't even know that, they still thought there were canals on Mars.
Right.
When Kirby did that. And so then they went to Mars, they found there was no canals, but then they found water channels, and they realized, oh, Percival Lowell was not wrong. He just was a little bit, his eyes were a lot sharper than anyone thought. Instead of canals, he found water channels. What it tells me is that the human race is slightly psychic.
More according to Ingo Swann, a hell of a lot more than slightly psychic. Guys, believe it or not, we've got to leave a minute early.
Is Bill running us off again?
Yes, he is.
Bill is right.
Get the hell off my channel. So hey, John, this has been freaking great.
Thank you so much, John, for having me on. Jerry, always a pleasure to talk to you guys.
I love you, John.
Especially
You're a good
you,
dude.
Don, the great Silverback. Now, by the way,
look at the hair. Look at the hair.
The people who are running the UFO disclosure, they put Tulsi Gabbard and Anna Luna on there because they read my novel, Morningstar Pass, The Collapse of the UFO Cover-Up, where two beautiful women end the UFO cover-up.
Hey, I'll tell you what, anytime they want to interview me, I am available. Gang, that's it for this week. Remember, Thursday, UAP Crossfire, 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 Eastern. We're going to have a hell of a show on there. I'm going to be talking about among other things, the Mothman. That's it, gang. Good night and sweet dreams.
Good night, everybody.